in a museum, like an art museum.
I need to sit back so I'm not a huge head here. There we go.
Well, I mean,
There we
You're
go.
live, everybody.
that
Are you saying you're a talking head?
Yeah, but like an extra large,
Supersized?
supersized talking head.
so
Great.
if Claire calls me Matt Son at any point, we take a shot.
Oh my gosh, hold on a second. You guys are gonna laugh if you see my red pants right now.
So we are live, everybody. So welcome.
Well, welcome.
Hey
Everyone.
guys.
Welcome everyone. Welcome back to Landing Your Dream Job. If you haven't been living under a rock over the course of the last few months, you know we have been here every Tuesday and Thursday, led by the vivacious, spunky Jennifer. My name is Dan Roth. I am here as a reprieve for Jen because occasionally she wants to, or she needs to step back, take a break, and be part of the action instead of facilitating it. So we are here for that purpose with an esteemed panel of guests. I am really, truly excited for this one. So before we get started, really quickly to go over a couple things. First of all, thank you for being here. If you have questions, make sure you post them in the chat. We're happy to answer them towards the end of the hour. Second, this event, as we do them, is leading up to our cohorts, which is the Landing Your Dream Job Bootcamp. If at any point something comes to you and you're like, hey, I really want to be part of that, we're going to be posting the link, but so you know, it's events.intrycareers.com. That's events.intrycareers.com. Go ahead, take a look, sign up, see all the testimonials that are there. If you want to be put in touch with somebody that's been through it before, I'm sure we could do that for you as well. So without further ado, thank you again for being here, and to our fantastic team behind the scenes. Valeska Silva, I am talking about you. We really appreciate it. So today we're going to be talking about networking, and this is a topic that's close to all of our hearts. In fact, Claire is one of the first 5 people I ever met when I came on LinkedIn. So she was one of my first networking opportunities. So this is really special today. Before we get started, we are going to, as always, go across and introduce each of our panelists. So we are going to get started with the newest member of the cohort, but the person I've known the longest. Claire, tell us about yourselves for those that don't know.
Oh my gosh, well, that's a true testament to how relationships can last, Dan, through networking. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. If anybody hasn't met Jennifer, Dan, Gina, and heard about this boot camp coming up, essentially, I heard about the results from the first one and could not help but join this second one. So I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me. If we haven't met, I'm Claire Davis, and I own and run Traction Resume, which is a resume and LinkedIn profile agency for people in the medical sales field. The reason I do this was because my recruiter foundation led me into a medical sales career myself. And through that, I had the ultimate cosmic experiment of going through 5 layoffs. So it was almost like this cosmic joke of, you know what to do, now prove it. So I'm so excited to be here today. Networking is definitely a primary reason that most of my clients get their jobs, and certainly the way I bounce back too. So that's me. And if you ever want to connect with me after the show, feel free to shoot me a DM.
Thank you so much, Claire. Really excited to have you here. It'd been a while since we had spoken, so getting to reconnect has been a special moment for me. Now, I'm assuming she's going to expect me to go to her last, but to throw her off a little bit, I want to introduce the person behind everything, the person whose creative vision has really led to everything that you see today, whose hard work and dedication to this product is second to none. I am talking about our fearless leader, Valeska. No, I'm just kidding, Jennifer.
It's also true. I'm like, I have no issue with crapping at Valeska at all.
Tell us about yourself, Jen.
So, well, first of all, that is very kind. And for all of you who are here, like, really deeply appreciate it. So I am the CEO and founder of Intry Careers, which has started out as a platform to create resumes that are ATS friendly. So we work with candidates. We also work with a lot of resume writers who create the great content, and then we take that and flip that into an ATS resume version. So like we're not a competition. We just know all the technical reasons and how things keep evolving, and why we as a company keep evolving. And why I created Intry was because people were being ghosted and not getting responses. And it felt like just a big sort of technological bully that needed to sort of be addressed. And not necessarily all of it was intentional, right? But that is why I started Intry, and why we keep evolving in the boot camp was because I saw all the posts on LinkedIn, and I met these amazing coaches and resume writers and expert networkers and expert interview people and people who negotiate your salary and help you prepare for interviews and help you figure out your messaging and your brand and optimizing your LinkedIn profile and creating your banner and how do you create your unique value proposition and how can you do all of that in 2 days. And instead of waiting months to find your dream job, that you are filling up your tool basket to do it ASAP. And that's how the boot camp evolved, was how could I do something that was helping job seekers, and how could I elevate the people that I really hold in high regard and bring them all into one platform at a price that people could really afford, right? So that's sort of how we got here. And we started doing the lives to share some of the nuggets that we've learned and to pay everything forward a little bit. So
thank you so much. And all of us that have been with you since the start really truly have learned how much value that you bring and how hard you work. And it really is the definition of raising people to another level. That is why we keep on coming back. So we appreciate you.
that's very kind. And thank you.
You're welcome. The last person, well, before myself, the last person I wanted to introduce, shouldn't be surprising that her initials spell Gur. I just noticed that. Corny as it sounds, I am a father. She is an icon of industry. Those that have been on LinkedIn for any more than 5 minutes completely see and understand the value she brings. She is somebody that those experts aspire to be like, as well as being an upcoming author. Gina Riley.
Thank you, Dan. You're too kind. Thanks so much. I love how the other two panelists are sharing their why. And so I'm going to lead with that. I know what it feels like to be stuck in a job and wanting that next level opportunity. And so part of my evolution in creating my career coaching program, Career Velocity, is knowing that it takes a lot more than just a resume. There's not just one thing that helps you move into the next job. There's a lot of moving parts. And so as I've worked with leaders and executives with my coaching practice, what I've learned is a lot of times people only focus on the things that in writing, but they're not spending enough time articulating their story. And so why I'm here and why I'm a part of this amazing effort is to help people get their start for their career transition in developing the unique value proposition. So they're talking about the right things and they're listening for the things that future job, target audience needs in them. And so I'm just super excited to be here today to talk about one of the moving parts, which is networking, one of my favorite topics. And I am super excited to hear what Claire has to say, because I know that she's got some systems that really work well also. So I'll hand it over to you, Dan.
Thank you so much. And, it's interesting that I'm sitting here facilitating a conversation today because, sorry, that was the coffee. It's interesting that I'm sitting here facilitating this today because my name is Dan Roth, and I am known as a community builder and a master networker. I've built communities of over 13,000 people here on LinkedIn. At one point, it was the most active group on all of LinkedIn. We've, Claire and I and Gina and everybody has done the networking from back in the Clubhouse days through the LinkedIn channels, through the in-person events. So there's a wide conglomeration of things that we do. Now, as far as why I am here to help facilitate, but I do have a strong passion for community building, for that networking component, for finding ways to elevate ourselves and elevate those around us. And the one thing I want to point out before we really get into it is, if you look at our first cohort, we had a number of people. And part of that networking is, well, what happens after the cohort? What happens in those days and months leading after? Well, we have people in the chat. I'll call out the data cowboy, Andrew Gibbs, that is sitting there commenting, and he's the first to endorse this program. And that wouldn't be possible if the networking, if the UVP, if all of the different components of the Land Your Dream Job Bootcamp did not work, because networks don't come to you when you're cold. Networks come to you when you're warm and ready to support. So I want to make that point really clear as we enter this in. Andrew, oh, this guy makes me want to make some jokes. I'm going to avoid that for the time being. I am going to say one thing that Jennifer is not going to like. This broadcast is in dedication to the beloved Cece, who recently lost. So for those of you out there, this program is dedicated to Cece. Thank you. So let's get started. Gina, you know what? No, I'm going to go to Claire first. I have to. It's sort of my duty, I would say. Claire, when we talk about networking and the job search, this is the thing that's been really pushed since the pandemic and the loss of jobs at that point. What is it about networking that is so intrinsic and important that's led to it being really the number one most discussed component of the job search over the last 6 to 7 years?
I think it really boils down to the fact that people still want to work with people they like. And if we think about that for a minute and we consider how marketing messages are formed, which is including our resume, of course, and how we talk about ourselves, we're really trying to move toward that familiarity of know, like, and trust. And so in the end, if someone is going to start down that hiring mission, because they either don't know somebody already that they know, like, and trust that they can bring in to solve that challenge, or they need to go find somebody. So our responsibility is to continue to stay warm, like you mentioned, and continue to reach out to people who we knew, who we know, who we want to know, to build that kind of network and to continue to foster the know, like, and trust with people so they know that we are available to help them for whatever challenge may arise. It's interesting, and I love, Gina, how gingerly you mentioned earlier that it's more than the resume. I caught that. But here's the thing. Gina's absolutely right. And if somebody came to me and said, Claire, will your resumes absolutely land me this job today? Well, the answer is obviously no. And I can tell you that from firsthand experience going through layoff after layoff after layoff after layoff and through another layoff. If I'd stopped at the resume, I would still be pitching my services to AT&T in Atlanta, Georgia, and just waiting in reply. So it's really the foundation, and it's a huge part of the job search process. Jennifer, what's going on?
I know. Yeah. I'm like, ooh, I don't know how to raise my hand on this, but so
you.
Right here. Ooh, you said something that I think is super duper important, and you said warm. Both you and Dan and talked about warm, and I think that there is not a clear understanding of what that means. So, like, if you can maybe give a little context or narrative to that, I think it will make so much more sense, and as we get more granular into this.
First, I will start by unmuting myself. Second, let's talk about being warm and what that even means. So when we're talking about being warm, a couple things come up to me. Number one, the likability factor, right? Like, how actually warm and welcoming are you with your message and your outreach? Also, cue the gardeners, my apologies. Of course, this always happens when we're on a live. But I will say that the other piece of being warm for me is being relevant. because we've all had that moment when somebody like knocks on our door and you look through the peephole and you see who it is. And listen, it could be like the cutest little kid from down the street, and we adore them on every other day of the week, but they've got a clipboard in their hand today. And the first thing we think of is, oh, he wants something, you know? And we, even as adorable, as much as we love this kid, we might wonder if maybe we need to get back to fixing dinner on the stove, or maybe we have something else we need to do first. And, you know, of course he'll come back. We'll circle back with him later. Now, imagine if it happens to be even a little bit of the crotchety lady who lives on your block, and she shows up unexpectedly on your porch, but instead she has a pie in her hand. You're opening that door, or at least if it's peach or apple, I am there. So what I'm talking about in terms
100%.
of warm, yeah, right? I mean, we're all going to open that door. And so the third component of warmth is going in and investing in the people that you want to get to know and nurture the relationship with. This is in stark difference to being transactional with our relationships. And I think this is also why networking tends to be kind of this icky feeling for most, because we naturally, progressively create relationships and contacts our entire life. Whether we're trying to get in with the other moms and we're, you know, our kids are in sports together, or we don't know anybody at an event we're at and we kind of bump into our neighbor and start a conversation. We as humans are wired for connection. So we just aren't normally doing it with a carrot or with a goalpost on the other end of it. So warm can mean many things for me. I would say one, approachable, sure, relevant, definitely. And also remembering that it's what we're naturally wired to do. It's just now we're methodically doing it with a goal in mind. So I'll step off because I want to hear your guys' thoughts on this too.
So let's break this down a little bit. And Gina, I see your hand up, and I promise I'll go to you in a second. But I think it's important that we break down a couple of components, because when we talk about networking, and we looked at LinkedIn because that's the platform that we're on currently, job seekers get told a lot of different things. They get told, well, you can network through informational interviews. You can network through the building of your actual connections. You can utilize things like, and forgive me because I'm not a big fan of this, social Saturdays, through comments and all these different components. So is there a difference? Is there a priority? Is there are there certain things that form stronger connections and networking opportunities than others? And where would all of you scale that from this is the best to this isn't going to work as well? Gina, I'll start with you.
Actually, that's a pretty good segue into what I was going to say, which is on topic, but slightly adjacent. I think it's about our approach and making it palatable and easy for people to say yes to a conversation, especially when it's a stranger that we need to gain their advocacy for a referral or for information. And one thing I love about the Intry bootcamp is the component of mental health and the aspect that plays into our entire process. So I've worked with some people who are starting from a place of sadness, anger, frustration, anxiety, fill in the blank, something that is causing them angst and making it really challenging to connect with people authentically and without a feeling of coming across with a feeling of desperation. And so I think it's important that during this whole job search, and as you think about networking, that you don't take with you into fresh networking conversations the baggage that you might be feeling, and to create a support system, network, something for yourself, so that when you're putting yourself out there for those various conversations, that you're showing up as your better self, if not your best self. But a lot of people that I work with will also have a therapist, or they will have a job search support team, but it's far beyond maybe the partner or the spouse. It's important to take care of your mental health so that you come out of the gate as your best self.
So I would add to what you said, which I completely agree with. And in my brain, I think of my support network as a container, right? Like who's in my container? Like who can I reach out to that can, if I'm looking for a job and maybe, one of my kids is imploding, right? And I can talk to someone who could relate to that. Or, if I'm not getting responses, or if I'm having a moment. And I think it's like, you need to make sure that you clear all of that desperation, because people can smell it, they can feel it, they can see it, they can anticipate it, and you will be shut down before you even get a foot in the door. So I think having those people that you can rely on to talk to is really important. And it's not the hiring managers, it's not the recruiters, it's, not the resume writers, maybe a little bit, coaches, right? But it is being able to like put forth your best self when you are asking something of someone, and being clear in your ask. I get a lot of people that reach out and they're like, hey, I'm looking for your job, who can you introduce me to? And I'm like, I would love to help you, but I have 10,000 connections. What specifically are you looking for? Like then I can see who I know that I can facilitate that too, right? And secondly, if I'm networking on my behalf, when I send a message, it's really specific, right? It's, I know something about you, I've done some research, and I want to have a conversation with you. And, because otherwise you're making an ask, and I think we get people who make asks every day, and that's important to help, but there's also a bandwidth, right? And a clarity that needs to come with that. Sorry, I kind of just touched on
No,
some
no,
things.
you didn't. And I was going to come to you anyway and explore something, uh, because the way that you curated the experts is a form of networking. We first met because you reached out to me, uh, and that's a way of developing uh, networking opportunities through outreach when it isn't. It's in similar, but with a little bit different when you're trying to build something like this. But instead, I want to go to something else really quickly, and that is, you brought up something important about what you can provide to people but not every person that reaches out to you to network is going to be somebody that you really know and can validate their work experience. So this question goes out to the three of you. How do you determine what level of connection that you're going to contact when somebody reaches out? Who's going to so in other words, what determines whether you're going to put them in contact with one of your really high value connections that is, let forgive me the term, a slam dunk, versus somebody that may be an acquaintance that may be able to help, but it's sort of a shot in the dark?
I can kind of take part of this. For me, I'm going to go the opposite direction. It's harder when someone simply sends me a resume and just says, keep me in mind for opportunities. That's almost the worst case scenario for me, because I get that little pit in my stomach, like, they want me to open this, they want me to digest it, they want me to get them, and then they want something from me, and I don't know them. What's different is if someone approaches me and says, I noticed that you might be connected to these people or people at these companies, and I am trying to gather more information about X, Y, and Z. Are you willing to make a warm introduction or help get me in front of those people so I can ask them questions, these kinds of questions? That's an ask that I might be able to, fulfill, versus keep me in mind, or do you have 10 minutes of time, or can you get me in front of somebody? Because each of us, when we introduce you to somebody valuable in our network, that we're also taking our reputation with us. So we want to be able to bridge that gap. And sometimes I've said, hey, hey, Dan, I don't know this individual, but they reached out to me and they're very curious about working at ABC Corp. do you have 15 minutes to meet with them? And then that way I'm also telling my other connection, I don't really know this person, but if I can bridge the gap and be helpful, I want to be helpful. Claire, did you have something?
Yeah. I think that the initial description you were sharing, to me feels like that clipboard again. If somebody comes into your DMs, you don't know them from Adam, this is cold. This is cold outreach. Now, there is a very low likelihood in that scenario that you've built up enough rapport that Gina is going to go put her neck out for you. I'm sorry, that isn't the way to go. And the thing is that we know this stuff, but we're just not used to networking with an end goal in mind. So you guys, take the pressure off of yourselves to go cold pitch people for jobs. It's not the way you built your career so far, and it's not the way forward either. So I want to kind of put ourselves a little bit in a different vein, if I may. Because what I find is it's not that we don't know how to talk to people. It's almost as if we don't systematically know how to go about it. And it gets so overwhelming that then we're scrolling and our thumb is like, we're blistering our thumb scrolling so much on LinkedIn, just trying to get like the hack, the thing to say, the place to search, the book to read, the audible that will give us the strategy for how to mentally, psychologically matrix somebody to the point of them walking us into their manager. Guys, you're making it too complicated. Try this. So instead of trying to become a behavioral scientist, what we can do to sort of take the pressure off in my world over anyway is we systemize the way that you gather people, and then we systemize the way that you reach out to them. This is going to help you guys in two ways. Number one, it's going to start to catalog people that you know already, that already love you, that are already in your corner. I call this the 5, 5, and 5. So when somebody's coming to me and they're just starting their job search, I say, all right, let's get your professional credentials together. We got to get the resume. We got to get the story right that Gina's talking about. And now we start to network. So the 5, 5, 5 works like this. First, we're going to think about and gather the names of everyone you knew from your past life, right? So people you used to work with, people you haven't touched base with in 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, but you know that if you picked up the phone, there's something you could mention that they would know and remember about you that could re-spark that conversation. Okay, that's number one. If I'm getting claps, this is awesome. Keep going. Number two, we want to do 5 people you know now. So the categories are who you knew, who you know, and who you want to know. When we're talking about people you know now, that includes people you work with, people you chat with regularly on social media, who's in the last 50 text messages on your phone. This is stuff you can find today. These are people you know now. Now, we're going to think about people you want to know next. And that is where we implement strategy for cold outreach. But what I find is we feel so tunnel visioned on those who are making the hiring decisions for the companies that we want, that everybody in our focus is in that third bucket. And that's when we try to be these like psychology ninjas and like say the right thing and like they're going to hire me because of it. But the truth is that 66% of your network are people that you knew and you know, and they are much more likely to help you than you realize. So let's tap into those. So here's how we do it. You gather everybody you knew, you gather everybody you know now, and write down their contact information. You can do this in Excel, you can do this in a note on your phone, somewhere where you can start to catalog people because you're going to start to systematically reach out to them. Then we're going to do this in a frequency of 15 people a day. We're going to spend 5 of those mental messages on people we knew. Hey, how you doing? How's Sally? Did she really enjoy going to Dartmouth? What an incredible girl. I've missed talking with you. How have things been? Right? Spark it up. Then we're going to do 5 with people we know. And here's the kicker. We typically think that because people are in our immediate sphere, that we're engaging with them all the time. But the reality is that we do tend to let some time pass. And even though they are incredibly close to us, I'm talking about people on our pickleball team, people we go to church with, people we see when we're in the pickup line at school, our friends, people right here in the studio. We think that we know them, we're talking to them all the time. They're very up to speed on what we're doing. And the reality is they're not. And they are maybe to a point, but only a few really do know what we're trying to achieve. So we are in charge of reminding them, connecting with them, getting them involved in our search. And then the third bucket is where we're going to start the research. And this almost needs to be its own show, but that's where you're going to start to make lists of people who are at your target companies, maybe 25 lists or so, where you can systematically reach out to people who work at the company and conduct things like informational interviews, ask for introductions, and so on and so forth. So the 5, 5, and 5 works because it starts you in this vein of logging your contacts, getting comfortable reaching out with people again, and just getting reinvested. You're not asking for anything. You're not there with the clipboard. You are there with the pie. You want to know how they've been, what they're doing, how are their kids, where are they going? Catch me up, friend. And you watch. When you invest in people in this way, they will naturally reciprocate and ask you how you're doing. And that's when you let them know, I'm looking for a job. Okay. But before then, we've got to invest in people first. And so the 5, 5, and 5 additionally works because once you do your 15 a day, your 15 outreaches to these people, your homework is done. Check that box and watch how it compounds every single day. Not everybody's going to get back to you, but for those that do, you will be busy
gardening
in your search.
You're gardening, right?
Oh.
You're planting the seeds and you're nurturing it. And I want to add just a quick thought, Claire, to what you said, is that I think generally people genuinely want to help. And 15 is a manageable number. And I think, like that's the perfect example of what I think is a warm introduction, right? Is like, you're like, hey, how's this? What's that? Right. And to me, you can use a similar warm introduction with like, I'm just going to use that Gabe, right? He's watching right now and be like, hey, Gabe, I like love what you're doing. I love your newsletter. I have a couple ideas of, maybe how we could work together. I'd love to, get a few minutes of your time. Right. And so like, that's a way where you can kind of do a warm intro with someone that but maybe it's a little bit adjacent to what right? But it's you're planting the seeds and you're not jumping on them with the thing of desperation of here's my resume or I'm looking for a job. I think you've got to kind of ease on in, like I'm not going to use the analogy that just came to my mind, but sorry, all of a sudden I thought I was like, single again.
I didn't know my DMs, why don't you, right?
But my point is still valid. Gina, don't make me start laughing because I'm going to lose it. Is I think that you can use a conversational tone when you're reaching out to someone, like for me, back when I was looking, there was a recruiter that I really wanted to connect and I really held them in high regard. And that's what I said. I was like, listen, you don't know me from Adam, but here's what I know about you. And here's a little something about me. And I think it would be worth 10 minutes of your time for me to get to know more about you and for you to get to know about me. And it worked and we connected and that recruiter was really instrumental for me on a few different occasions. So that's my 2 cents to add to what you just said.
Go ahead, Gina, before. Yeah.
I'll just tease Jennifer. Also, what helps is having a really spiffy LinkedIn banner that really says, this is what I'm about. For people to go, yes.
Okay, you guys, why this is funny is because like the second time that I talked to Gina and she like we really hit it off and she was like, Jennifer, I gotta tell you, your banner is terrible. Like, let me help you. And honestly, like I didn't really pay that much attention to it. And I looked at it and I was like, that's pretty bad. That really, it's, and it's much better. Right. But it was, first of all, I love that you were honest with me because it wouldn't have occurred to me that it was so terrible. Right. But it matters now. Those optics matter.
They do. And, you know, I'm glad, first of all, I'm glad you chimed in after Claire did, because I had a follow up that I was going to go to. And then I'm like, Claire just did Claire. I need a minute. Um, and I've been hearing Claire do Claire for as long as I've been here. So I'm used to it, but I still am not used to it because, it honestly is like gold dropping from the sky. And this is
Wow.
true. This is truly the difference
That's a big
between,
compliment.
well, it's truly the difference between this boot camp and everywhere else. What Claire gave you, what Gina gave you, what Jen gave you, it's not theoretical. It's here's everything you need to do. Here's a step by step breakdown. And that makes it so much easier than being told, okay, well, here's a concept, now run with it. And that ability and guidance really sets what we do apart. Now, I want to transition, and we've got about 20 more minutes ish within the show, but I want to reverse engineer this. And the reason I want to take the opportunity because Claire is here, and Lauren, if you are in the audience, I'd love to hear you chime in as well. So Gina, Claire, myself have been on social media for a very long time. We were there with the advent of Clubhouse, and we went through these periods where we'd be on stages, and Claire and Gina still are, or Lindsay Dowd, who has podcasts, Lauren, who has podcasts, where we're speaking to large audiences on a regular basis. And anytime you speak to a large audience, you're going to get a large response, a large amount of people that are reaching out to you specifically. So I want to reverse engineer this and not just have it be what can you do as a job seeker, but how do those people that you're reaching out to identify how to respond when they're getting thrust with such large masses of comments and requests every day. I'll start with Gina, and then I'll go sort of reverse to Jen and then Claire. When you are getting that incredible level of outreach, what is the determining factor that makes you say yes versus no? Or, I mean, let's just be real for a second. We don't get to every single email that we receive.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple ways to answer it. One is for those of us who spend a lot of our time on LinkedIn or other places developing content and putting it out there for free, it is harder to personally accept that time if it's in addition to that. And so one thing is, if someone's putting out a lot of content, you can read the content and then make that as the connector. Like, could I get a few minutes to go deeper on this concept or this idea? That actually might be a way to ingratiate yourself with people who are spending countless hours writing or speaking or putting out content. That's one. But we're not always reaching out to someone who's sitting on social media and putting out content. A lot of times the decision makers are in their company doing their job, and you're trying to tap them on the shoulder and say, do you have some time for me? And so what I want to address that, because I think that's actually more likely than anybody reaching out to any one of us on the panel, because the jobs are sitting somewhere else, most likely. So I interviewed this man named Rich Lehman, and during an economic downturn, he held 99 informational conversations. Almost all of them were in person, on site at the Nike campus. And his goal was to get a job at Nike. But he was in supply chain, a leader in supply chain. And not only was Nike on basically a hiring freeze during that window of time, that was one of the areas that was particularly hampered in opening up requisitions. So when I interviewed Rich, I skinnied down his advice to a top 8. So the key is to get the yes from these people. And he got 99 yeses. So the first thing when you reach out to get a yes is only ask for 20 minutes of people's time. And what Rich found out, at least in person, was most of the people who met him in the cafeteria at Nike, most of them enjoyed the conversation and were willing to stay for an hour. So that's incredible. Second is you need to do your research and come prepared with written questions. And then the third thing is you need to research the people that you're meeting. Go see what the connection points are. Go look at their work history and make some assumptions that you can kind of come up with some creative ways to really lock in a human connection with them. It could even be something personal, you know, in the volunteer section of LinkedIn, or you can Google them and just see if you have something that makes them feel like you did some homework and that you care about that meeting. The fourth thing is show up 10 minutes early. That would be for in person, but nowadays we're on Zoom a lot, so show up on time. Keep detailed notes.
And if you're going to be late, tell somebody.
Yeah, oh my goodness, yes. Keep detailed notes of your conversations. Bring your resume, but don't share it without an invitation. Because if you're asking for an informational conversation, the time should not be spent digesting your resume. It should be spent on the questions you formulated that help you navigate your job search and asking for referrals or recommendations for other people that you should be talking to. You want to be mindful of people's time, and then you want to follow up. And I think Rich actually followed up with handwritten cards for all those folks. But that gives some frameworks and guidelines. I'll stick the article because there's so much more gold than just this list. But you must show up to these informational conversations first knowing what you have to offer, what's your toolkit, and then trying to get these conversations so you can find out what problems they're trying to solve, so that you are reaching into the correct stories that you've already put on your resume. It's in your LinkedIn, that you're having a conversation about the wins that you've had and how you might be able to best help that target company.
That was great. Jen, I'm going to shift the question a little bit to you, because you are one of the busiest people I've ever met. And time equals money. And I think a lot of times when networking, people tend to forget that specific aspect. So at what point do you have to say, well, if you need this amount of time, then, you know, I don't want to say put your money where your mouth is, but there is going to be a cost to that.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that I've gotten much better over time about setting boundaries, because in general, I like to help people. I like to connect people. I like to facilitate things, but it has to be sort of reciprocal, you know, depending on what the situation is. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to do the boot camp, right? Was that there wasn't enough hours in the day to get everybody the information that they needed, and to get it in a way that it was going to be meaningful. But I mean, if someone took the time to send me a note and I wasn't spammed, right? And if it wasn't just one message that you were sending, you know, via duck soup or something, and it was the same message to everybody, you know, those in general, I don't respond to those, frankly. But I do always leave a couple hours a week for the people that I don't know, right? And it sort of goes back to like when I was growing up, my grandparents and my parents always left a plate, an empty seat at our dinner table. And when I was little, I was just so perplexed by that. And both sets of grandparents did it. And I was like, so how come we're doing this again? And they were like, well, that's for the people we haven't met yet. And so like that has just stuck with me my whole life. And that's how I kind of view LinkedIn and how I view networking, right? Is some of the networking is for the people that you haven't met yet. And by doing that and leaving those 2 hours open every week, I have met some amazing people that have turned out to be great friends. And when I needed them, they were there, right? Like they showed up, and vice versa. And getting back to sort of like the, you know, when someone requests my time, I have to do sort of an evaluation of what it's going to be for. It may not be something I can do this week. Maybe it's something I can do in a month from now or 2 months from now. But you know what, I can tell you that if someone does schedule time with me and they don't show up and they don't send me a note and they don't say mea culpa, because listen, I've done that. I'm like, oh my God, I double booked, or this meeting is running late, or I have to be like, and I have to move something. I probably won't engage with you again because you disrespected my time. And that's the only thing that I have that I can really try to control. Right. And especially if I'm doing it to help somebody and that person doesn't show up, that's kind of a deal breaker for me. But if there's context to it, not a deal breaker. No context, deal breaker. I don't know. Did I answer your question?
You did. And I appreciate that because I know a lot of us do set some time aside and for those people, and showing up on time, doing things like letting you know if you're going to be late because we understand that things happen and things come up. Incredibly important. And also thank you for sharing about the boot camp. I want to go to Claire, and then after Claire, I'm going. Okay, give me 1 second and we will go through. So Claire, I'm going to go to you, then we're going to go to Gina, and then we are going to talk a little bit about the boot camp and how to sign up, and then we're going to be off the air. So go ahead, Claire, and what are your thoughts?
Careful what you ask for. I have many.
I've known you for so long. Like I mean, granted, I know that anytime I turn to you could mean being an hour or two late for different events, but
I
that's
tend
okay.
to be long-winded.
That's why we get along.
So I would say that back to your original question, you had said essentially, who deserves our time? And the thing is that our time is really precious. And what happens, I find, is that even when we have extra space on our calendar, people will feel like they have a right to that time. And we forget that when we're trying to make inroads, just like Jennifer and Gina said, and you too, Dan, that time is precious and you are not allowed to have that time just because you purely need it. So it's really, really important to make it so, so clear that you value somebody's time. I love what you guys recapped, be on time. Let them know if you're going to be late. Make sure you show up and share something relevant. And instead of sharing an example from me, I'll share one from a recent event I did with Kenneth Lang and Virginia Franco. And we had this wonderful recruiter stop by, and she was giving us some of her, background on what she's been experiencing lately with job seekers. And she said that of the messages that she had received on LinkedIn, so let's put ourselves in a recruiter seat for a minute. It's a literal onslaught of messages.
Yep.
Hundreds, guys. She said that 3 sent a note that was more than just, here's my resume, I need a job. I want everyone to take this and truly conceptualize what this means in terms of opportunity for you. Because if it's this low of a threshold to stand out, imagine if you led your networking with care, consideration, pre-research and questions like Gina mentioned, being clear about your ask like Jennifer mentioned, and actually investing in the other person. And then when they ask you for what you're looking for too, then you clearly stated what that is. That's called rapport building at the basic level. So I just want to reinforce that all the stuff we're going to share today, all the stuff we're going to share in this boot camp, I mean, there are so many ways to stand out. There is no one right way to do it. But what I can tell you is this. Should you take the advice that you get here today or then, you're going to be standing out from the crowd regardless, because almost no one is taking this kind of care in their job search. So when you do, and when you learn some of these different methods to do so, you're going to be standing far apart from like 99% of the competition. So don't miss your chance, and don't stop yourself because you're nervous and you don't know what to do. Learn a couple things, try them, and just know that not everybody is out there sending these personalized messages. Not from what I can tell. So If that doesn't fire you up to join a boot camp, to reach out to a coach, to take what we shared here today and implement some of it, really let it sink in, because you have a massive opportunity. So don't sleep on it.
I gotta say, Claire, before we continue, like I'm looking at your office now, and there's something noteworthy about it looking sort of like the Oval Office. So I'm just putting that out there, like looking like it has the flag in the background. I won't get too into it. But okay, so Gina, I know you have something to add, and then I'll wrap up.
Yeah, I just want to double down on context. You need to put yourself in position yourself and your messaging in the context that any given person that could help you will be able to easily digest it and then say yes to a conversation. And I agree with what Clara has said, is these recruiters oftentimes will get just a resume sent. They'll just send a resume, but there isn't any context behind it. And the other thing that I think is a misnomer is that many of the recruiters out there have open requisitions that they're actively working on. So if it's an executive search company, for example, their total focus is on the client that hired them to go to market for that specific job. So if I'm a recruiter and I'm working on a chief financial officer and a chief operating officer requisition and trying to manage that search, then an inbound message about a chief marketing officer isn't serving me and my purpose right now to speedily help my client. So when you approach recruiters, you need to look at it within the context of what they have going on now. And you could even throw a bone in and say, I can see from your posted job openings that you're managing right now that you're not working on a role that's in marketing. Would you have 10 minutes for a quick chat, in between your interviews, so I could, gather some information about how you go to market, how often you get these kinds of jobs, just something to get a conversation if they have the time. But you have to know that even if they have the 10 minutes in the middle of these other searches, that they don't have a job in their back pocket that they're going to be able to pull out.
No, I really loved the context, and I appreciate you chiming in on that, Gina. It's such an important point. First of all, I want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to thank Jen and Gina and Claire, and for everybody that is tuning in. I know that we have people like the data cowboy, Andrew Gibbs. We have Gabe that's been trying to get me to crack for the entire length of the hour, as well as others that are showing up. Before we conclude, I want to remind everybody to please make sure that you go to events.intrycareers.com. That's where you're going to find all the information about who's actually part of it, what you should expect, what those testimonials are. I do want to mention that in addition to Claire, Gina, and Jen, we have Carrie Lynn Shaw, Lauren Sermon, we have Tanya King Floyd, Donna Spina, Anna Lang, Helen Godfrey, Lisa Hammett, Jessica Copens, and myself, Dan Roth, that will be there in supporting each and every one of you as you go through this. We are excited and encouraged and anticipating having such an incredible time and really sharing what's made us successful with you so that you can as well. And one thing you'll learn is when you become part of the Intry family, you never leave. So, and I promise I'm not saying that in a cult like fashion.
You're like the Hotel California of career.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't want me to break into song. You really don't. But
I promise you're safe. Let me preface. Well, now that Claire's here, I'm not so sure. But for the most part, you're going to be safe. But anyway, check out events.intrycareers.com. Coming up on Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, we are back. Jen, who do you recall off the top of your mind who's going to be on that and what the topic is?
Well, I was going to say we're having a quick one tomorrow too with
Yes.
Andrew and Donna to talk about what their experience was with the boot camp. So if you wanted to get granular and ask questions, you can do that. And so it was much better than cats. Andrew, thank you so much. And for the one on Thursday, you have caught me a little flat-footed because I was so focused on this one and the one, and we've been talking about it. But it is, I believe, the one with Carrie Lynn Shaw, right? And
yes, Lindsay just commented.
It's a UVP. UVP is on. Sorry, my bad. UVP is the one with the rest of the subject matter experts.
Got it. So we have tomorrow with Lindsay, Andrew, and a bunch of the individuals from the first cohort. Thursday, we have Lindsay, Carrie Lynn Shaw going over your unique value proposition. And then we'll be back next Tuesday, same time. Same bat channel, same Superman station, whatever your preference is. Once again, this episode is dedicated to Cece and loving memory. We appreciate you. Our thoughts are with you, Jen, and your family, and we look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Until next time.
All right, everybody. Thank y'all for showing up. We really, really appreciate it. And if you need us, we're one message away.
Just a DM away. Bye. Thank you.
See everybody.